episode of Tips and Tricks with your destination coach, Danielle Shelton. This morning, I am speaking with Miss Kathy Belletty. How are you doing, Kathy?
I am good, Danielle. How are you? Thank you so much for having me here.
Yes, I was like, you know what? I keep seeing all your content and you're so dope. And every time I look at you, I'm like, oh my goodness. And you know what? The fact that you are super encouraging, especially when I fell flat on my face, I was like, I gotta have her. I gotta have her on the show, man.
Oh man.
You know, support can be hard to come by. So I was like, let me ask this beautiful Black woman on the show.
Look at you.
And get her input on what is happening. So Kathy, tell us, what is it that you do?
All right. So right now, I actually own a company named Motivate with K.A.T. So what that is, it's an online training platform for admissions advisors and their leaders. So what happens, a team can just log on to the platform and there's all different types of training materials, from effective communication with students, accountability, managing a class start. There's all different tools and resources that they can use where they can train their team, because the bottom line is in admissions, there's so much that's going on, especially with enrollment leaders. Sometimes they do not have time to train their teams, but guess what? It's vital to the society. So, I figured, what, why not put the platform online so I can help way more schools?
Yeah. And, admissions is such a huge part of any school because that is where the money is. Like, students to come on campus, that's where the money is. And if you don't have like a seamless system, what do you do? So
exactly.
You have found definitely a niche in a market that needed it, because I can tell you now, my 17-year-old, she's in her senior year, and we are applying to schools, and we are finding that admissions portion is huge. And there are some schools she did early admission and she has applied to, and she's like, it's been months, I haven't heard from this school yet. And I was like, I don't know what to tell her. And she's like, I want to choose that school, but I don't even know if I got accepted. So I'm looking at other schools now.
There you go. The process is broken. And you know what? A lot of it has to do with the traditional versus the career school too. I feel like career schools, they're way more involved and hands-on when it comes to students and their success.
Yes.
And you got to think of the difference between the traditional and the career student.
Right.
So sometimes you have the traditional student, they come out of high school, they're like, I already know I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a CPA, and I'm going to this university.
Right.
And then we have the career student, 18 to 65 plus. And they're either looking for a career upgrade or a career change, but they're like, okay, how do I get from step A to step B? And that's where admissions fills in that space. So customer service and communication, that's what we're missing.
And I really fell in love when I taught at Kaiser. I really fell in love with my non-traditional students because, they worked really hard.
Yeah.
And if they came back to school, there's something that they are there for.
Exactly.
So they were always my students that like turned in everything. If they had questions, they asked. They were very engaged in the lesson. They were always my avid note takers.
Yeah, definitely.
So I ride for that. So we're looking at education now, right? And in the cusp of our education system, there's been such a decline in professors. It seems like a lot of schools are taking the adjunct route and not fully hiring professors or assistant professors. And it seems like the quality of education that's being delivered has started to decline. So why do you think schools now are gearing their sites more towards adjunct instructors and not towards actual full-time instructors or professors?
You know what? Honestly, I think it has a lot to do with funding. In a lot of cases, enrollments are down. And since the pandemic, I think that we have to take a step back and know how to communicate more effectively with our student. Because if you think of the background of our student, right, these are people who, they have no idea how to get from one point in their life to the next. You may have single moms, you may have people who need an education immediately. But guess what? In order to hire a full-time instructor, the revenue has to be there. But if enrollments are down, it all starts from the very front end. How are you going to be able to pay all these full-time instructors? Right. And it really goes back to the front end. Quality students leads to more quality enrollments who are actually able to be retained and then graduate. But if they're not there at the front end, where's the money?
That's the question.
Exactly. And you know what? I find that a lot of people are not in higher education for the right reasons. Okay, so you have a lot of admissions advisors at the front end, and for them, it's just a 9 to 5. Right. And I've always said, if you're going to be in higher education, it may be 9 to 5 on paper, but really and truly, this is something that you take home with you mentally every single day. If I tell you my quick story on how I even got into higher education, it was back in the day when because I went to traditional school. And me, I have a short attention span. If I feel as if I'm not being challenged, I'm out of there. I gotta feel as if I'm being challenged. So I left traditional school and I went to DeVry University. And I would never forget my advisor. His name is Felix. If you remember somebody's name 16 years ago, they made an impact. But what happened, I went in on a Thursday, class was starting that Monday. And Felix was trying to get me into the program. They had an entrance exam, passed the math with flying colors. And then the English I failed by 1 single point. So what he did, in order for me to actually get the points that I needed to suffice for that, I had to take the SAT exam. He jumped on the phone and acted like he was my dad. And he's like, look, I have my daughter. She's trying to get into school, but she needs to pass the English portion, and she just needs to take that part of the exam. What can we do? They said, you know what? We could get her in on standby this Saturday. She has to be here at 8 o'clock. Right. So I went in on Saturday. Of course, somebody didn't show for the exam, went in, took that portion, got the points that I needed, started class on Monday.
Wow.
And from that point, I said, you know what, this is something that I want to do, because I went on and got my bachelor's in 3 years. And when I think it was all because of Felix, my admissions advisor. Wow. And from that point, that's how I started my journey into career education.
That is such a dynamic story, because it definitely shows that you have to have those helpmates along the way, right? Exactly. Like, it matters if you have the admissions counselor that cares, and the instructor that cares, and the professor that cares. Like, it matters. The advisor that cares, the counselor that cares. When you just run into those people that they're just there, I'm going to tell you, not gonna, try to keep it on a positive level. But I can remember going to the financial aid office. And the first time I went to the financial aid office at my school, the lady was there, and she was like, it was like 1 o'clock. She was like eating chips when I walked in. So that let me know immediately how that was going to go, right? So she was like eating chips. And I was like, something's wrong with my financial aid. I didn't get my award. I don't know what's going on. Can you help me? And I kid you not, she did not stop eating her chips. She looked me up and down, and she was like, what's your name? What's your room? What's your number? I'll see if I can have someone call you. She didn't even give me direct eye contact.
Wow.
And that stuck in my mind, like, so does she care? Does she not care? And for me as a student, I'm like, I need my financial aid for my classes. So like,
exactly.
And exit her, I came back around 3, just because I'm that type of person. I was like, okay, I wasn't really vibing with her, but I'm gonna come back to the office.
Because you need what you need.
I came back at 3, totally different person. Before I even got in the office, she was like, oh, hey, how you doing? And I was like, I need help. And she was like, oh, what's your student number? She looked me up, and she was like, oh, come to the back. I see what happened. And it was like a simple fix. But the fact that she took the time
exactly
to look me up, to see where the mistake was, to do this, whatever it was like a little simple fix. And not only that, while we were there, she was like, "Oh, and you qualify for this, and you qualify for this," and I was like, "Yes, of course. What else do I qualify for?"
I totally get it. You know what? This is why customer service is super important. And I don't think a lot of people realize how much customer service plays a role in higher education, because it's all about how you make people feel. And this is why so many schools are losing students. Because that first impression is everything. And some of our students have choices, so they're like, you know what, forget that. I'm going to go somewhere else where I feel appreciated. Unfortunately, not all students have that space where they can say, well, I have multiple choices, so they just have to put up with it. But then they have a horrible experience, and there go Glassdoor reviews. Okay.
And then, what I try to instill in my 17-year-old is the power of the push through. Because it seems like that's lacking in like 16, 17, 18, something with this generation, like that push through seems to not be there. And what I try to tell her is, don't let one bad experience stop you from getting to your goal. Like if when I went to financial aid and the first lady didn't pay me any attention, if my attitude would have been, oh gosh, my life is over, I gotta go.
You would have never moved forward.
I would not have moved forward. But there was an inner push in me that was like, I need to go back and just talk to somebody else, because that whoever she was, that wasn't it. And because she stayed in my mind, can I tell you something?
Sure.
I went to campus, and because she stayed in my mind, I told the other students, yo, if you go to financial aid and you see, turn around, go back. Don't even go. And you know what? People don't understand that simple word of mouth from me could stop her from being able to have a job.
Yep.
Because no one shows up because you are there. That's a problem. Yep.
That is so true. So true. And it's on all levels. From admissions to academics to career services, a lot of students do not move forward because of the staff sometimes. The same way why some students actually choose a school because they like the advisor that they spoke to first. So it works both ways. So it's so important that people understand that.
Now, let's talk about this mass exodus that's happening. There is a mass exodus that's happening with students where they are choosing to not go on campus. After the pandemic hit and everybody kind of had to go to school online or at home, what I'm finding now is students are not willing to go back on campus. So what can schools do? What can they do to get students back on campus? Because right now, they like a lot of students are just not really feeling campus life, staying in the dorm. And that was like one of the best parts of being in college was the campus life. But these new, generation of kids, they don't want to. They're like, if I could just stay home and do this. So what can schools do to motivate students to get back on campus?
You know what? A lot of it when it comes to our generation, well, this generation now, it's all about visuals. One, people are afraid. Okay, that's the bottom line. People are afraid. I had COVID a couple of months ago and almost died because I was in the hospital on oxygen. Okay, so when people are afraid, and the schools have to show students, okay, this is exactly how we're following CDC guidelines. Because right now, if they're just reading what you're doing, it doesn't matter. They need to see people in class. They need to see the social distancing. Yes. They need to see, okay, all the sanitizing stations. They need to feel safe to get back into these campuses. Because the bottom line is not everybody is following protocol, and that's the problem. So even when it comes to businesses where people are trying to get back out there, a lot of people are afraid, including myself, because you look online, you look on social media, and it's like the pandemic never happened. Yes. So now when it comes to going back to school, people are thinking, okay, is this school really going to be safe? I have parents that I have to come back to who have underlying issues. So sometimes people are just choosing the easy road, but at the same time, when it comes to student being successful, it's important for them to be mixed up with other students so that they can encourage each other.
Yes.
Same thing when it comes to church. I mean, I watch church online now because I'm afraid to go back into the building too. But they always say, when you pray together, something happens when everyone is in the same building. I think it's the same thing with education. So I think more videos, more visuals, where they can actually see the students in the classroom and how they're interacting, have students throw reviews up there that says, I felt the same exact way. But when I got to this school, this school is really following CDC guidelines, and I feel comfortable because people follow other people, so I think that would help.
You know what? And I love that because you're right in that people want to feel safe. Parents want to feel like their kids are safe when they are going off to school. And, we have to acknowledge, and people don't like to, because I think we want to turn a blind eye to it, but we have to acknowledge that there have been losses. We have students that have lost parents and grandparents and cousins and uncles and aunts. We have people that have had losses. And if you are that student and you have lost someone close to you due to COVID, you definitely are going to be reluctant to attend a school that looks as if no one is following protocol, guidelines. There's no soap in the bathroom. I really feel like you hit on something. Schools definitely have to do a better job with their social media, showing this is how we are keeping our students safe. This is what we're doing on campus, because other than that, and I'm so glad that you're okay with your battle with COVID. I'm so glad because my husband had the same battle when we had COVID almost a year and a half ago. Wow. And it was awful. And I definitely thought we were going to lose him because he has asthma. And it was one of the scariest experiences of my life. And, when it hits your house, it hits the entire house.
Exactly.
And it hit me and my two kids and my mom is turning 70 in April. So, that was scary because I'm like, oh goodness, she's older. But when we send our children off away from us, we definitely do say, are the kids, my 8-year-old, goodness, pull your mask up, pull it on your nose. And then we look in the cafeteria, we see like all these kids and there's no mask, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
The level of anxiety is like through the roof.
Yeah, because my son is 21 months old right now, and he's going into the facility in March, and I'm freaking out because he's not at the age where he can wear masks. And these younger kids, they're sneezing in their hands and then they're touching all the toys, and I am freaking out right now because I'm like, oh my gosh, can I sit there and make sure that everyone else is sanitized? No. So I totally get it. And both of my parents actually turning 70 also in March and July, and they have diabetes. So it's like all these things you think about. Yeah. But you know what? You're right. The schools have to do a better job. And one more thing, they have to actually take the consensus of these students and say, what is the reason that you don't want to come back to campus? Because sometimes we can't come to a conclusion until we actually ask the customer. What is your reason? And I bet you if they look at a percentage of students and they're saying the same thing, now they can come up with a plan based on what the majority is actually saying is their reason.
Yeah, got to get the student voice.
Exactly.
Well, this has been so refreshing, and I am so glad to finally have been able to get you on Tips and Tricks. You have given me so much information, especially when it comes to that admissions part, when it comes to really building a relationship and giving students somewhere to go, somewhere where students feel safe, not just allowing those people who think of the job as a 9-to-5, but really having schools dig deeper when they hire people for positions that come in contact with students, because it is important. So this has been super enriching, and I can't wait to have you back.
Girl, I can't wait to come back.
So I'm going to close out with something that I say in some of my shows. That's, what is your favorite? So on LinkedIn, there's been a lot of polls going on about what's your favorite this, what's your favorite that, who's your favorite whatever. So did you watch the Super Bowl Sunday, the halftime?
No, I haven't. I didn't. Let me tell you, my husband and I met in 2012 when the Giants played, right? That was the last time that we watched the Super Bowl, and my parents said that we liked the Super Bowl. That's a West Indian term that we use when it's like, you know what, you brought bad luck to the Super Bowl because the Giants hasn't played since. So we have not been watching it. And my husband, unfortunately, he's like a car guru. He's never been into sports. Okay. So him and the baby was sleeping during that time. So unfortunately, no.
Oh, so you had some peace.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. So what is your favorite way? I guess I can ask you Super Bowl halftime stuff. What's your favorite way to celebrate Valentine's Day since we are just on the cusp of it? What's your favorite way to celebrate?
You know what? Just family time. You know, back in the day, you know, pre-COVID, you know, we used to go out to dinner, but after a while, you know, it gets redundant.
Yeah.
Give me some roses, write me a nice letter, and let's watch Netflix and chill with a bottle of wine. Yeah. That's how I like to celebrate Valentine's Day. And that's exactly what we did. So it was amazing.
Oh, I love that.
You know, short and sweet, simple.
I love that. Well, that's it, folks. This has been another episode of Tips and Tricks with your destination coach, Danielle Shelton and Kathy Belletty. See you guys later.